Awesome to see everyone joining here today. Thanks for coming back. Or if this is your first time on the series, welcome. I think this is going to wrap it up for us. Not necessarily that we've learned everything, but I think we're going to get to a point where we've like covered the whole process, and then it'll be of creating a block theme, and then it's all about expanding on what you know and learning to do a little bit more over time. So, all right. So today I called it from site editor to theme. So we've been working in the site editor, and we're going to move into like getting our files into our theme. So let's go ahead and start while people are continuing to join us. My question is, what type of block themes do you hope to create in the future? Are there any particular topics, type of site that you think would be particularly good with a block theme? I have been thinking about this myself, things like blog themes. I was thinking about like what the way that a block theme would be for maybe like a veterinarian's office or other small business. Wish list for blocks. So this is not a wish list for blocks, but blocks are independent of block themes. They're used by block themes, but the blocks themselves are not a part of the block theme process. Yes, so I'm curious, what kinds of sites. So Elisa says, I need to do an organic farm site. That would be really cool. Very cool. I was thinking about clients that I've had in the past. I worked with a vet. It was like an animal hospital that specifically specialized in a certain procedure. And they had a lot of requirements for how they wanted their content to be displayed. And the block editor made that wonderful for them. And if I could do it again now, it definitely would be a block theme. Anyone else? Any other fun ideas for sites? Okay, well, let's go ahead and go forward into our little housekeeping section. So we are recording this session. We will share this video to YouTube. It's been, I'll add it to a single playlist so that if you want to go through the entire series, you can do so. If you are at all concerned about your video being in the recording, feel free to turn off video sharing. Mostly it's my screen share that ends up being in the video. And this space is a safe place for discussion. So please feel free to add your thoughts. And you're welcome to speak aloud or use the text chat. And then if you know any of the answers to a question or have any ideas that are relevant to what we're talking about, please feel free to share with us, as we are all here learning together. Okay, so far, this list keeps getting longer because we're going all the way back to the beginning. So we've looked at how to install WordPress locally, how to navigate to and examine a WordPress site's theme files, how to create a child theme folder for the theme that we've been working on, which is a child theme of 2022, how to change a color assignment or two in theme.json, a deeper exploration of supports and presets in the settings section of theme.json. We did a little detour to talk about CSS custom properties, introduction to the style section of theme.json, the basics of the WordPress template hierarchy, and then how to build templates and template parts in the site editor. And if you missed any of those earlier sessions, they are all on my YouTube channel and linked in the description of this meetup as well. All right, so I'm just going to check the chat here to see if we have anything that we want to address before we dive in. So Lisa says she's going to be working on a bakery site. That'll be really cool. If you could have like a menu or the ability to order or things like that. So very cool. And Jean says, I'd like to add custom pages for the dashboard so individuals can post to their section. Yeah, that would be interesting to do. That's probably more plugin territory in terms of permissions for roles, but would be a cool thing to do. I've seen similar ideas in the past. All right, so as far as what we're going to do today goes, we are going to be building out the remaining templates for our theme. So we started building a few templates. We're going to look at kind of like what a complete theme is going to look like in terms of what templates you should probably include if you were building a complete theme. We've been working from a child theme situation, so we're actually inheriting a lot of our templates from the parent theme, but we can kind of walk through what the templates should be if you were going to build an entire theme. We'll look at the process for exporting the templates from the site editor to files, and then we're going to install those exported files into our child theme. We've talked a little bit already about the parent and child theme interaction and how that flow goes. And then we're going to continue from there to talk about how you could potentially start as a child block theme and then ultimately end up with a standalone block theme that no longer relies on the parent theme at all. And then we can look at additional steps for expanding on our theme if we have time at the end. All right, so that is that. I'm going to move over to another screen here. Let's go into our site. I'm going to zoom it in a little bit so you all can see this a little better. Okay, and I'm just going to move over to the questions. So Lisa asks, is it possible to create a custom plugin to contain theme JSON file for site-specific modifications only instead of setting up a child theme? So right now, that theme, the JSON file does need to be in the theme itself. However, there are two right now in WordPress. The best way to do it is if you want a slightly different theme JSON for one site on a multi-site or something, a child theme is the best way to go. There is an experimental kind of a test that's being done in the Gutenberg plugin that allows you to add additional simplified theme JSON files into a styles directory in your theme, and then you would be able to select that from the site editor. So while it's not exactly what you asked about, that is something that like there can be kind of a hierarchy of theme JSON files to like determine what parts are being used from different places. So one of the really cool things I think about the style selector is the idea that you can have a different version of your theme JSON that has different default settings, but with the same names that could completely transform the front end of the site without any content changes. So kind of like if you're familiar with CSS Zen Garden from years ago, where the site structure and HTML markup was always the same, but the CSS was different, and it would completely change the look and feel of the site based on what was in that CSS file. So you'd be able to do the same kind of thing with these style variations. I always shout out CSS Zen Garden anytime I get a chance to, because I think it was amazing. It transformed my perspective of what web design really looked like. All right, so the next question I see, when I create a template part in the admin, the part is stored in the database. When I export, it will export as a file. I can then add my file to theme JSON if I bring in my new template part into the admin, which will show in the admin, the file or the database entry or both. So basically, when you create, we're going to actually get to this. So I'm going to actually say we're going to hold on that question because I think it's going to become clear as we go through the exporting process, which ends with clearing our customizations from the database because they are actually what will take precedent over the files. Elisa says there's a Gutenberg update today. Is that a point release? It might be. I think Fridays would not typically be a day that an actual release is done. They're usually done on Wednesdays. So you can copy the entire theme JSON file from one theme to use in another. Yes, you absolutely can. Their theme JSON files are completely portable. You can add it from one theme and put it in another. The one area you need to be, there are two sections right now where you have to kind of be aware, because if those things aren't actually in your theme, then they won't be useful. And that's the custom templates and the template parts section, because they're actually looking for specific files that are in your theme. Yes, next Wednesday will be release day for the next version of Gutenberg. Michael says he likes to listen to me riff. I think that's just how I operate. I riff all the time. Oh, yes, that makes me smile. Yeah, so you'd want to copy those templates too. So if you were copying, well, probably you would want to copy any declared templates over or create new ones, or remove those sections from theme JSON would also work. All right, let's see if I can remember where I was going now. So I'm in my site. It looks like I've got some updates that I haven't done, which I'm not going to worry about right now. I'm going to appearance and then editor to get into my site editor. And let's see what we've got here. So I'll go into templates, and I have the wrong themes activated. I can tell that because it's showing me the templates are added by starter, which was a very minimal theme that we created last week to just demonstrate a couple of things. So, and there aren't any other templates. So I'm going to go back out and activate the actual theme that we want to be working from, which is 2022 child. And now when I go back in, I should actually see things. There we are. That's what we wanted to see. All right, templates. So we have all these templates. Most of these are actually added by the parent theme. It's not clear that that's what's happening from this view, but that is the case. So Sally, you say you find it annoying that the site editor sidebar auto hides. I do too. I feel like what I usually want to see is not actually the site editor, but the template editor, the template list. But I guess that's just how I work right now, because I'm usually explaining something rather than creating a website. So my use case might be a little skewed. Okay, so when you are working in here and you want to create a new template, there's only a very limited number of templates that you can create right from here. But there are a number of templates that are probably a good idea to have if you're going to have a complete theme. So I'm going to kind of just go down the list of the templates that I have to point those out. This tag one is not one that would need to be on most sites, because it's saying for this one specific tag with the ID of 7, this is the template that I want to use. So while that might be good for some specific sites, it isn't something that would be used generally. And if you were to export this with this template in place, and you were to put it on a different site, you probably tag ID number 7 probably won't be the same tag on that other site. So, you don't know what tag will have ID 7 in anyone else's site. Yeah, that was what I was getting to as well. So the next one down is single post. This is a template that you would want to have on most sites. So it is possible to have a complete theme that doesn't have a single template. But if you think about the way that a post is usually displayed versus a page, there are usually even if they're minor, there are some differences between them, because you have on a single post, you might include the author and the date and the categories and tags, where a page might only have the content and a title. So that's why we would probably, in most complete themes, have both a single post and a single page template. The next one down is index. This is not one that you can create from within the site editor, but it will be there because you have to have an index template in order to have a block theme. That is like just the baseline. And this is the ultimate fallback for if nothing else exists for that display, it's going to use the index, and usually it's a list of posts. The home template is completely optional, but if you have anything that's more than a basic blog, you probably will have some kind of a home template that's going to show your content in a homepage style way. So, okay, so there's a question, can you change the name of the template after it's created? So, it's a good question. Yes, right here. So this is a custom page template, and I could actually change the title of it here. It would not change the file. And I don't know for certain that the file that gets exported would actually match up any longer afterwards. So that's a good question. We could try it. We'll save the name and see what happens when we export in a little bit. Mad science experiment. I love mad science experiments. You learn so much by just trying things. Okay. All right, so we talked about single post, page, and index, and home. The 404 page in a classic theme would have been 404.php. It automatically gets pulled by WordPress if the view that's being requested doesn't exist. And it's the same for a block theme, except that we either create a 404 template here in the site editor, or we create a 404.html template in our templates directory in our block theme. So the next two, blank and single post no separators, these are both custom templates that would be added to your theme if it made sense for your use case. A theme does not have to have any custom templates. The search results would be if somebody uses a search box, what the results look like. If there is no search template, it's going to default back to the index view. The page large header is another custom page template. And then the last important one here is archive. And archive is going to be usually quite similar to index, but specific to categories, tags, author, date archives. It's not required. If you have an index template that works the way that you need it to, you can just use that as well. All right, Michael has a question. Can you provide an example of why you need something like a specific home template if you're building your pages by blocks and patterns anyway? Wouldn't you normally just start from a page template? I would say it depends. If you were going to have that template and that was the only place it was going to be used, you could do it either way. You could either have a template that maybe doesn't have, maybe it has the header and the footer template parts being pulled in, but just the content area. You might have your main page template just be, it might have a different layout than you want your home page to have. So there is, there are a number of ways to accomplish the same thing. And as Sally's pointing out in the chat, the home.php or home.html is not necessarily for the front page of your site. It's for your main blog page. So it's like there are all these ways to do the same thing, and sometimes they can get a little confusing, but if it does what you want at the point where you've published it, then you're probably doing okay. So, but that whole what shows on your front page, your home page, is a big question mark for a lot of people. We could do a whole session just on that.
Naming is one of the two truly hard things in programming.
Yes, naming things is hard. We say that really often in my workplace. So. All right. So yeah, wondering what purpose templates serve in the era of block built sites. I think that ultimately the template hierarchy is being all pulled in from this legacy way of doing things that we had from classic themes. So everything that existed before template hierarchy wise still exists. It's the naming of the files is a little different, but you might not use a custom home.html or front page.html in your block theme. You might just have a more general page template that would work for your home page layout and also for other pages. Yeah, so Sally says the existing WordPress theme hierarchy, template hierarchy maps to the HTML templates for block themes. So last week we looked at that hierarchy a little bit. And while this is the classic theme hierarchy, any of these you could replace with HTML at the end and it would do the same. It would be used in the same scenarios. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to export exactly what we have. We have all these templates. We even have this Mad experiment here to see what happens when we export a template that was in the theme and we edited the name. All right, so in order to export, we need to go back to the site editor. And in the site editor, we have this little more options icon up in the upper right corner with three vertical dots. When you hover over it, it says more tools and options. And when we go there and open that drop-down menu, we have this under tools, we have export, download your templates and template parts. So I'm going to do that. And what that did was it downloaded a zip file. And let's see. We can get this where we can see it now. It's very small for you, I bet. Let's see if we can see them. Oh, there it is. That doesn't want to zoom. Okay, well, we'll have to do the best we can. All right, so it's a theme directory. This would be like the name of our theme. And then we have a templates directory and a parts directory. And in the templates directory, we have all the templates that were there, including the ones that came from the parent theme. So it's possible that if we wanted to maintain that parent theme structure, we might not want to move all of these. I would, yeah, so there's a question privately to make the text larger. And
yeah, I can't see it.
Yeah, it's really hard to do this because it's not letting me. I don't know why it's not letting me. All right, here, we're going to do it a little differently. I'm going to trick it with a screenshot that I can zoom. See, let me zoom this. Apparently not. Well, it was a good try. Okay.
You might have to save it and then zoom it in whatever your photo viewer thing is.
Yeah,
It's a good suggestion.
I have another idea that I think I can do pretty quickly. Okay, it's a little grainy, but it's a lot bigger. Okay, so this was the template hierarchy, all of the templates that were exported. And if I were to open any of these, what we would find inside is the HTML markup for the blocks that were in that template. So that, and also one of the block types is actually a template part block. So anywhere we had a template part, which would be a footer or header, and we have a couple of alternate headers, would be called in these files. So that's basically what it would look like. So now in our scenario, where we are looking at a child theme, we would probably have to kind of like cherry pick what we want to actually put into our child theme, because we might not want to override what the original parts and templates were. But maybe we've made changes and we do want to. So seeing where you made the changes, and the way you see that is by going in here to templates, and you can see the little blue dot on anything we've edited. And those are the ones that you would probably want to add to your file, to your theme. So, so the page no separators does not have that title change in the name of the file, but let's see what we have in the HTML for it. My computer thinks HTML files should be opened in the browser, so hold on just a second. There we go. All right, so we have nothing here that actually indicates that change in the name. So that name change is actually only happening in the database. So, and this is a really good point that Sally has just made in the chat, that the export does not include some things that you need to have to make a complete theme. So that export is not an entire theme. It's only the templates and the parts directories. So you still need your index.php file, your style.css file, and your theme JSON file. So those three files you have it's expecting those are already present in your theme, because the export is actually not a theme exporter. It's only a template and template part exporter right now. I would think that probably this theme JSON export is going to be coming before long. I think that there's going to be a lot of demand for that.
I'm hoping it will be there by 6.0, and also some of the, because I know they've been discussing a lot of things like, hey, we really want to be able to do this with the template editor, like create new templates for things where, like, you know, if you wanted to create a template for a specific category, you either have to do it from like within editing the list of that category, or you just have to make the HTML file and then modify it.
And modify it, which is what we did here. So yeah, basically. And that's what you would do here. If we create, so last week we created this tag 7 file. It doesn't have anything in it, but then we edited it within WordPress. And then the export of that, which I think I may have wiped out the changes when I was doing something else during the week. The export would have those blocks, so we could replace this empty file with the exported one. It's definitely not a finished product right now. I think you can call this a functional proof of concept. And it's going to definitely get better as we go along. The things that we have that are working will continue to work. So backwards compatibility is always a huge consideration. So once we've put something out into core, we're committing to that continuing to work, even if the preferred method for doing something does change. And then if there are ever breaking changes, which do occasionally happen, especially after a long time, then those would be surfaced in the process of getting ready for that release. All right, so we are about halfway through our time. So I'm going to open up this tag file. Let's see if there's anything in it, and it's almost still in the browser. All right, so I do actually have stuff in my tag file. So if I take this tag file, and I'm gonna just copy it. I think I might know why I was having so much trouble before with getting the text to be bigger. I didn't actually extract anything. So I'm going to actually, just to keep it simple, I'm going to copy the text from here and into here and then save it. And now if I go back to my site where I have tag 7 with this customization applied, I can actually clear the customizations. So it's going back to what's in the theme. And now if I go, oops, I should have stayed in there, go into editor. And then templates, and then go into edit tag 7. You can see now we actually have content in here instead of it just being an empty template. So this is now using the file. So the easiest way to determine if your site is using what's in the file versus what's in the database is from this template list or the template parts list, either one. There's a little blue circle over the icon. So that means that this page separators, that I added the word test to, is actually pulling from the database rather than from the file. Now, if I clear customizations here, I'm expecting that that word test is going to disappear. So let's see if I'm right. Yep, it went back down to the place where it had been before instead of at the top of the list. So now it's back to using the file. So this would be a great time to open up for questions. What have I missed? What have I been confused? So question, did you add tag 7 to the custom templates on theme JSON? I did not. I don't think. So let me, so we can look at that. If I go into theme JSON and I look for my templates, which may not even, oh, here we are, custom templates at the top. So you can see that these are not here. You don't actually have to add this one as a custom template here unless you want to be able to use it for a page or a post. Because that is a WordPress hierarchy file, we don't actually need to declare it here because we don't want it to be available to be used directly. So when you create one of these entries, you're basically telling the system what post type you want to make it available for. Now, there is one little gotcha there. If I go back into my WordPress site and create a new page, it might actually show in the dropdown. So we're going to do another med experiment, if I'm right. So I have under page attributes. There actually are no page templates showing here. Oh, here we are, page template. It used to be under page attributes, you would select your template. But with the template editor, it's been moved into its own section. So see, I actually do have tag 7 in that dropdown. Because it's a page, any custom file, template files that are added will automatically show up as page templates. I don't know if that's going to...
I suppose because you're creating it, like your page becomes the archive the same way, you know, when you choose a page to display your posts, it becomes the home page.
Let's
So
find out. Let's see what happens. The page template is going to become a query. So yeah, it just shows the loop with just the one page. That's not super helpful. All right, so let's see if we can make it so this doesn't show up in the dropdown, which is what I would want to do if I were creating this thing that has this custom template. And the way that I'm going to try to do this is I'm going to add a new section to the custom template section. And I am going to say, I don't want any post types here. And I'm going to say it's tag 7. Number. I'll just say tag 7 here too. Okay. All right, that is the way it should be formatted, I think. I've never tried leaving this empty, so we'll see what happens. Okay. So I'm going to update this again. And now I'm going to refresh the screen. Oops, and trash my post accidentally because everything was bouncing around. Almost did it again. Template, default template. Oh, it's still showing. So I wonder if I need to say null. Doesn't look like that. It's expecting a string. So that's something
I wonder if
might,
there's a none option. Sometimes figuring out which thing you need to use to. Nope. That's
yeah,
it.
I
Doesn't like
wouldn't
it.
think, I would expect it to be null or false. But I don't think it's going to be false here. Yeah, that's the same thing. It's looking for, well, the schema is looking for a string. So if I put it in quotes, then it will be a string and it'll be looking for
I
a
think it
post
means
type called
empty,
null.
empty quotes.
Oh, empty quotes. Let's try it. That could actually be it. So let's see what happens. Yep, that did it. Good job. I think we just solved a problem together. So that's how you remove a template from the list, is that you declare the template in this template parts with the empty string as your post type. Now, whether or not this is a bug or a feature, I can't guarantee. So, but it does appear to work for the moment. Basically, we're saying that this is a valid template for a post type with a name of nothing. Yeah.
So if you created a post type without a name somehow, you might see that template.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work exactly. Can you create a post type with no slug? I don't think you can.
I think it would break.
I have a feeling it would.
But yeah, because like you can create a post with no title, although that gets really confusing in the editor. But I don't think you can actually create one with no slug. It would use the ID or something.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we did learn something new. I learned something new. So I love that. That's so fun. All right. So I did see a question. Why would you want to hide a template versus creating a block pattern in place of that template? Well, a block pattern would not work for this scenario because what we have is actually a WordPress aware template. So it's a template that WordPress is still going to use for tag ID 7, but we don't have access to it to use it from within the page editor.
And most of these, if you were creating like a category or a tag thing, there might be several places you wanted to use that, which is part of why, I mean, it's a template. So you don't have to like individually insert the pattern at every place you want it to show up.
Yeah, a really obvious place where this would come into play much more frequently than this particular tag example would be for your homepage template. You could have the homepage template that was used as your homepage, but then also be available to other pages. So you could create similar pages to your homepage using that template. So yeah, Rick says guardrails for design discipline. That is actually a thing there's a lot of conversation about how site builders, people and agencies and freelancers and anyone who's building a site for someone else can put guardrails around the way that you work with the editor, because out of the box, it's like, whoa, everything is open. You can do all these things. You can make it look like MySpace, which you probably wouldn't want if you were handing off a client project to somebody that maybe wasn't as aware of the design requirements as you were.
That was a
So
big worry when page builders first came out. Is like, no, we don't want the clients to be able to do that. Well, like, hello, it's your client's website. They own it. But also many of those products created an option to say who has access to what out of this. And there are some things already in these systems for locking templates, so that maybe if you create a template for a portfolio post and it's got these blocks in it, you can say they can remove the blocks if they don't need them, and they can rearrange the blocks if they want to, but they can't add any random block whatsoever in there. And so you kind of have to think about that. But in general, it's only going to be the admin users who see this. So you would certainly want, the not trained people to be using editor accounts versus admin accounts, because there's all kinds of other stuff they could break while they were in there.
yeah, so at the template level, that's true. And then, but even in the content creator level, if you only want them to have the content creator or whoever's adding the content to the site to maybe only have access to your approved color scheme, you can make it so that that color picker goes away. So it's little things like that that you can really refine the experience. And if you're training these clients on how to use this, so much easier to train if there are fewer options. So if they only have the options that they need, then it's then it can be an easier thing to maintain over time as well. So there's a let's see. Somebody mentioned the social learning space that Fabian hosted, which was not recorded, sadly, but I'm already reaching out with him to see if we can come up with a way to make it a repeating thing or something that we can do again and maybe actually get it recorded. But then I think that he was also going to be doing some kind of a persistent post. I did not get to see that one, which makes me a little sad. I would have really liked that. All right, so we've talked a little bit about the custom templates part of ThemeJSON and what it actually does. It determines what post types, the two post types that are going to most commonly be used on a regular site or a site without any extra customization is either going to be page or post. So if you look at the ones that are in this ThemeJSON file, which was copied over from 2022, you can see that we have several page templates. We have one that is for both posts and pages that's called blank. And then we have one that is just for posts. It's called single with no separators. So you can mix and match. And if you have other post types, you can declare these templates to be available for those post types. So if you had a portfolio post type, or if you had an e-commerce site and you had post types that were added by your e-commerce plugin, you could actually create custom templates here in your theme and then declare them as being available for that post type. So that way, the main thing is that you don't want like the entire list of all of the files that are in your templates directory to just show up everywhere on every post type, because chances are they were not designed for all of those use cases. So, and maybe this could be refined in the future as we've learned, like default templates get listed. We might not necessarily want that to happen. But for the majority of people, so maybe it gets omitted by default, but then you can actually add it back in if you wanted to. So that would probably be more of what I would expect to happen, but I may not be seeing all of these cases. All right, so quickly before we get to the end of our time, I would like to just look at this template parts section. So the idea behind template parts is we have these two template part areas. And I know that there's a word that is better for that, and I can't think of it right now. But basically we have header and footer that are like special template parts. And they are really designed to be either the header or the footer of a site. Now, there is nothing that says that the header has to be at the top and the footer has to be at the bottom. You could design it however you want, but there are two distinct things. And then there are general template parts. So if you have a template part in your theme, for example, we've got header large dark. If you don't add it here, if you don't add this section here for header large dark and give it the area of header, then it's not going to be available to you in the header in the site editor. So it would still be available to you if you were creating a template part that was not specific to the header or footer, but it wouldn't be for the header template area. So, and I don't fully understand all of the thinking that went into the way that this is set up, but this is what we have right now. So header, footer, and general. And general would be like sidebars or what we used to call widgetized home pages. Like all of the widget areas that you would put into a home page could be template parts. Okay. So let's just go ahead and look at what that looks like in the site editor real quick. So we're going to load up our default template, which is home in this case. And I have this header template part here, and right now it's using header dark small. If I select that, and then I can click the replace button here in this little toolbar, then I can choose other headers. And you can see here that my options are header dark large and header. It's not showing me header dark small because that's the one that's already selected. So I wouldn't select it if it was already selected. But it's also not showing me any of the other template parts that are created. So I don't see the footer ones here, only the ones that were declared as these are the header template parts. Okay. If I were to go outside of the header here, let's say like below the spacer, and if I can make a template part. So let's say I want this spacer to be a template part. I don't know if I would ever do that, but I can use the make template part. And then I'm going to give it a name. And then I'm going to say what area is it for? Is it general, header, or footer? If I create it as general, which is what I'm going to do. Now we have our spacer part. And if I go back, let me go ahead and save our settings here so everything is fully loading. I'm going to refresh. Okay. Now, if I go and I try, I've created a custom template part that's only in the database right now. If I go and replace this again, it still doesn't show in the header options. But if I go to the spacer part that we just created and I try replacing that, here I have all of them. I have header, I have footer, and then if I had other custom ones, they would also show up. So basically the situation is that if it's set for the header, it can either be used in the header or a general. If it's set for the footer, it can either be used for the footer or the general. And if it's set to the general, it can only be used in general parts places. So that is the way it goes. And yes, you can assign a template part to more than one area. So if I were to go down to the bottom here, maybe above my footer here, and insert a new part, I can go to template part. I can choose existing. and then I can use my spacers part. And so now this part is being used twice on the page. So, and this is not a terrible use case for it, to create a spacer as a part that you would use in a bunch of different places, because now if I change the height of this template part here to 100 pixels and save it, then it should also update it at the top where I used it here. You can see here that it's set to 100 as well. So yes, it is, reusable blocks are very similar. But if you were going to include these in your templates, you probably wouldn't include a reusable block in a template. You would use a template part. And it's another situation where there's more than one way to do the same thing. And Elisa says that would be a global change, right? Yes, this would be anywhere this template part is used would be those specific settings of whatever blocks are in that part. And it would be propagated across the whole site. So I actually would probably do a spacer this way, because if I wanted to make an adjustment to it across the site, maybe I use that spacer 100 times across all of the different templates, and I could just have it update all at once. Question, let me just check to see what questions I'm missing. We have about 9 minutes left. So Sally made a comment. The idea is that you use template parts with blocks rather than widgets in the footer, header, or whichever template parts you create. Yeah, it helps me to think of these template parts a lot like headers, footers, and widget areas, only made up of blocks instead of widgets. Let's see. Do templates work the same way as template parts? Do they need to be explicitly declared in the relevant setting section of theme JSON? Templates do not need to be declared in the section of theme JSON unless you want them to be available for something that's not a page. So if you want them to be available just for pages or for whatever WordPress would do with it naturally as part of its template hierarchy, then you don't have to declare it into theme JSON at all. If you want to remove it from the list of page templates, then you could use the trick that we figured out before, where you give it the empty string in that section. But if you wanted to be able to use it for something other than the page post type, then you would need to declare it and give it permission to be accessed from there. So if I go, this is a good example, I think. If I go out to my posts and edit a post, you'll see we have the template option, which wasn't available before WordPress 5.8. On the post type, because we didn't have custom post templates, only page templates. There were plugins that would allow you to do it, but it wasn't something that was easy to do. But now we have this. So the default template would be pulling from post.html or singular.html, depending. But now we have two others. We have blank and we have single posts with no separators. These are the ones that were specifically declared in our theme JSON as being available to the post type. Let's see. Can you assign a template part as both header and footer in the theme JSON file? Yeah, I think you probably could. Let's try it. I think the way you would probably do it though. So let's try making this an array. Doesn't like that. Expecting just a string. Well, let's see what happens. Let's see if header becomes available in our footer. I have a feeling that we'll have to do it a little differently, but let's try it.
5-minute warning.
You got it. All right, in our footer, we can try making this. Well, let's try creating a new one. Footer. Choose existing. Yeah, it's not there. So let's try doing it this way. So I just duplicated those lines and then changed the area to footer. It is entirely possible that this won't work. Nope. Well, that's interesting. I changed it to a header type. Fascinating. So it looks like, no, it would be either one or the other, based on what I'm seeing here. All right, so let's see what other questions we have as we start to wrap up. Question from Michael, which I think that Sally has been answering. Does WordPress have a visual indicator for when a block or template part, etc., is global? So a template part is always going to be global because you're actually calling in the template part. A block on a single block is not going to be global unless it's dynamically generated, like pulling in a list of posts or something like that. If it's a reusable block, though, which is one or more blocks that have been saved to be reusable, then that will be global. And when you save a reusable block, there is going to be an indicator in the editor that it is a reusable block. So, and I think that's basically what Sally said.
It's less obvious than it could be, but it is there.
It is there. And unfortunately, because of the all-inclusive nature of the site editor, it can be easy, if you are not being very careful, to accidentally make site-wide changes that you maybe didn't mean to. So I would say that while you're getting used to this interface, be working in a development environment and hopefully with real content if you can. Yeah. So Michael says that he's concerned about end users, not us site builders. Yeah. So the end users, you may not want them to have access to these views.
Right. I mean, if they're not admins, they won't see it at all. But yeah, it's if you see this little thing up at the top that says home with the down arrow, that's like, this is the template editor.
Yeah. All right, so I see one more question and we'll use this as our closing little thing. So we can't add a template part into a page or a post, correct? I'm pretty sure we can. So I say pretty sure because I never want to like completely say that I'm sure if I'm really not. Nope, I thought we could. I guess not.
I think you basically have to create a new template for that page or post and put the different template part in it.
Yeah. So I think the idea was to make some distinction between a template part, which is meant to be placed within a template, and a reusable block, which is meant to be used in a poster page. So, and that does move those two things apart a little bit in the way you think about them. So I feel fairly certain that I was able to do this at some point in the past, so they must have closed it up as somewhere along the line. All right.
And
So we
we're
are at time. So thank you all so much. I would love to hear from you all if you are interested in being in touch. And I would love to hear, and I'm sure Sarah would too, what social learning space topics you might like to see in the future. It would be really cool. So I am a Daisy O on the Make WordPress Slack. You can also find me at Daisy Olson on LinkedIn, Daisy Olson on Twitter, any of those places. I'm usually Daisy Olson. There aren't that many people with my name in the world.